married. And he takes these texts head on. So if anyone wants to study that, you know, you can do so. But basically, yeah, what's going on is people are taking a context that's completely different from context today, and then are trying to apply that to a completely different understanding of sexuality in the modern period. Having said that, there are some sort of positive texts that people can draw upon. There's a beautiful story, for example, you know, King David and Jonathan having a very close relationship. We think of the relationship between Jesus and his beloved disciple John. There is a story of the Ethiopian eunuch, which sometimes transgender people in the church like to use as an example of, an example of sexual variance within the Bible times, where Jesus engages, where it's actually one of the disciples engages very positively with this Ethiopian eunuch. So there are some positive ways in which we can read the Bible to support LGBTI people today, but I think we also just really should be conscious that we're talking about a very different culture in which the Bible was written from the kind of modern understanding of sexuality today. I hope that answers the question.
I agree with Stephen.
Thank you. Can I just interrupt? I've just got two more people that can they ask the questions, and then we want to go on to, we'll bring Phil in. So we've just got two more people, and then bring Phil in, and then we'll go back to the question and answer session. Is that all right with everybody? We all cool with that? So pick first, and then Natalie, sorry.
You did say any question, right?
Any question?
I just want to make
you might win a prize if it's that good.
Well, you are very beautiful. Not until you started saying that you're sex and stuff. No, it can't be right. So, you're very pretty lady.
Thank you.
And secondly, it's all very well educating the children, and more often than not, it's the parents. That is the issue, because I sit on the Equalities Committee in my union, and you can tell the parents have, how do we educate them? They have no idea. Oh, no, you can't talk about that. And they just don't want to listen. They don't want to be educated. What do we do?
They're going to die one day. honestly and truthfully, you're fighting a losing battle. Some parents that I meet, you're fighting a losing battle. And I learned something when I went into management. You can plough all your energy into the people that don't want to learn, and it wastes a lot of your energy. If you just give a little bit to somebody that actually wants to learn, somebody that actually is already on board, watch them fly. So all I'll say is, it's a fact. These people that are stuck in the mud are going to die one day, and whether or not they like it, children are sponges. Do you know, I'm so blessed to have a 3-year-old stepson, and he is the most wonderful little boy, and he's going to live in a world where it's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. Gender and sexuality is irrelevant. Ben and I both have very good friends that are transgender and gay, and that's the environment he's going to be brought up in. And whether or not these parents like it, children are growing up in this era. Children watch the news, children look at the internet, so they will learn, they will teach themselves, and bit by bit, the old wood will fall off the bandwagon, and these children will eventually have the exposure that they need to make up their own mind. I'm not saying that all the children are all of a sudden going to be transgender activists, because some of those will also be narrow-minded, but eventually we'll get to where we need to get to.
Yeah, mine is more sort of like a comment. I'm from an Irish Catholic family. My mother's 75, and she has great difficulty even saying the word lesbian. She goes, you know, or she can't just get the words out. She just can't accept it, no matter what. She's one of the most racist people I've ever met in my life, but she's actually one of the most generous, loving people you've ever met in your life as well. But we went to see the film The Danish Girl, and it was more like a social experiment, taking her to see it. I wanted to see what her reaction is going to be, and I have a 13-year-old daughter who went with me. I purposely sat them beside each other to ask the question. And my daughter, she watched it, and my mother said, what's that about? And oh, is he one of them? And you know, it was these kind of questions the whole way through. And my youngest wee girl says, Granny, would you be quiet? And she says, there at the end of it then, she says, I says, well, what did you think of the film? And she says, that's not normal. And my youngest wee girl says, that is normal. And that's the way life is, and you just have to accept it. So you're right in what you're saying about children. You know, she has just accepted it, and she's at a Catholic school. And I was actually really surprised because the film was discussed in the school, and the importance of it was discussed because there's a girl in her class who is actually transgender.
Wow.
You know, so it is moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Craig, I'll come back to you. I just want to introduce fortunate she's had a bad time in the trains. And I've introduced you, so I'll just throw you in there. Can we have a warm welcome, please?
You know, I really do apologise for the lateness. You know, when there are some things that are just way beyond your control and you just say, oh, let it go, just let it go. I think I wanted to swear and F and everything on the train. And she said, you know what, don't do it. Just stay calm, you're going to get to your destination. So, first of all, thank you very much for the invite, and, you know, Maria sort of sending me a text message from morning to night and waking me up, telling me, are you going to be here, are you going to be here? You know, I didn't know my timekeeping or was that bad, but this says it is. So it's a pleasure also to be on the panel with you guys. I asked the question, what do you want me to talk about? Because most people want to ask me about why I declined an MBE and, you know, how difficult is it being black and gay, and, you know, my response to being black and gay, and I identify as a very out lesbian, it's not difficult. It comes with many different challenges. That's what I like to say, because if we say it's more difficult in the black or BME or BAME communities, we start to put particular people in categories, and I would like to say the black community are no more homophobic than the white community or any other community. There are different challenges when it comes to dealing with, you know, one's faith, one's belief, and one's sexual orientation. And on top of that, coupled with a number of things like dealing with racism, Islamophobia, dealing with, you know, the issue of being an out lesbian, or being gay, or being bisexual, and being transgender. And I like to say everything, because what we tend to do sometimes is we just say lesbian and gay, and we kind of erase the bisexual and the transgender history and her story or their story. So for me, it's really important when we are talking about LGBT, we say LGBT and mean LGBT, and I and Q, and also if there's something, a terminology that I use or don't use, I'm always happy to be corrected, as long as I'm not having one of my power surges. I've just started the menopause, so please, you know, be patient with me. So, as Maria said, you know, just talk about whatever, you know. You're right, the theme is religion, belief, and philosophy, and I'm like, oh gosh, I can't even spell philosophy. But I think when I started, because I'm the co-founder of an organisation called UK Black Pride, and I'm also the director of it, but in my day job, I'm the head of political campaigns and equality for the largest civil service trade union. So I love my jobs and the things I do because they intertwine with each other. It's full of so much richness, and means that I can actually really be totally inclusive, but keep on being political, be part of a trade union movement, know that my roots and my background as a working class girl, you know, child of Ghanaian parents, I have children as well, and yeah, they're over 21, and I pause for that moment. Yes, you're all supposed to say, wow. I am going to do it again. Yes, and my kids are over 21.
Oh my God!
know you'd be shocked, but yeah. So when you talk about your child at 3 years old and, you know, being in a world that and I know not everyone likes the word normalise, but for the moment that's, or usualise, I want to normalise the conversation about sexual orientation and faith, and also let's challenge and tackle racism, because I sit here and I'm not just part of the LGBT community, I'm not just a black person, I'm not just a woman, I'm also not just a person who has a hidden disability. So I think for me, we don't divorce these things, it's what we call intersectionality. And that intersectionality means that I can be my true authentic self and be allowed and able to bring everything to the table and not have to talk about racism and leave my gender at the door, not have to only talk about gender and leave my sexual orientation at the door. I talk about everything and, you know, try and really normalise it. And I'm also a Christian. And for me, it's important, and my belief and my faith, I should say, is a relationship I have with God. I stopped going to church, but that doesn't mean that I have no faith. And one of the reasons why I stopped going to the particular church that I grew up in is because of what was being said, and how one has interpreted the Bible, and how one uses the Bible to bash you over the head. However, you know, when we go to church, what we mustn't forget is that we're all sinners, because we're all there for a particular reason, and it's to be saved, to feel a sense of comfort, to feel a sense of love. So my faith is, yes, I believe in God, but that doesn't mean I'm any less of a person because I'm an out lesbian. It doesn't mean I'm any less of a person because I choose to love women. It really doesn't, and I think that that's always the difficulty that people battle with, that you have to choose one over the other, and you shouldn't have to do that. However, a lot of the people in the community that I work in, that I serve, that I support, always say to me, you know, I have no faith, I just don't want to deal with it. I've cast it out because of how I've been treated back home in my home country. They use the Bible. You've only got to look at somebody like David Kato. David Kato, the LGBT human rights activist in Uganda, who stood tall and stood proud in the face of adversity, ensured that he was championing and fighting for the fundamental human rights of LGBT people. And what happened? He was brutally murdered. And it wasn't just by people that were terrible and really, really bad. It was by people who said they had faith, and they said that the country they are in, those sodomy laws that stand, is what is there, so he is wrong. He is absolutely wrong. That's what they said. He deserves not to be on this earth. That is what somebody of faith and religion and belief said about somebody who is fighting for human rights. So in the wake of David Kato being killed, you can understand that some people will turn around and say, you know what, this religion lark is no good for me, because if they're going to use the Bible and hammer me, if they're going to use the Quran and hammer me, if they're going to use any form of method which comes from an institution that has a religion, if they're going to use Catholicism and batter me, then I choose not to believe. I choose just to fight for what I believe is right. Now, I sympathise, I empathise. In my own coming out journey, this was over 19 years ago, I came out to my then, you know, partner, husband-to-be, and I said, this is not right. I can't do this. And he was of the Rastafarian belief. And when I said, this is not right, something doesn't feel good, I was battered black and blue when I said, I don't believe that I love you as a person that I can spend my life with in an intimate relationship that means we would be husband and wife, because I have feelings and I didn't quite understand it. Do you know when you're coming out, sometimes you don't actually know that you're coming out as lesbian, you just know that something is so different and you need to unmask and unleash whatever it is, otherwise you stifle yourself, you strangle yourself, and you can fall into the biggest, darkest depression. So I came out to him as the first person, and my whole world turned upside down, and I just remember being left there on the floor, being kicked, being told that I am the dirtiest, excuse my language because I don't really swear, but dirtiest whore ever, and I got quoted things from Leviticus to Matthew to John to Luke, and that's all I remember. I don't even remember how the punches rained down. All I remember was the quotations from the Bible that were being used against me. So, you know, I can talk about this now because it's part of my journey. But I haven't lost my faith. I haven't lost my belief in my love to want to strengthen humanity and make sure that we fight for what's right. It doesn't mean because one person's ignorance over who I have become or have always wanted to be should stifle and stop my life. It was difficult because I come from a family where I have wonderful parents, you know, they're very set in their ways. Like they said, you know, your mother's really racist, but my mum's the most prejudiced woman you could ever think of. She's like the Ghanaian version of Mrs. Bouquet. She will be like, you know, oh, you're not going to bring home a Nigerian man, are you? And I'll be like, Mum, aren't you West African? What's the problem? You don't know, no, you don't want that, no. And I'll be like, Mum, really? She's very, very prejudiced. So when I then came out to my parents, my dad, who's lovely, really liberal, and, you know, for a quiet life, he would just nod and it's okay. My mother, on the other hand, you know, there's not a word for, in our language, there's not a word for gay and lesbian. Gay means happy. So in many of the African countries, or even the countries which still carry these sodomy laws, there's no word for gay to translate it. There isn't one. So it's hard to help them understand. And it goes back to your point about teaching the adults, because we can teach kids. They are sponges. They do absorb and they adapt and they try to understand. But it's the elders that, you know, because there are things that are so ingrained and set within them that they don't change. My mother took this as if I had murdered 7 people in front of her. She couldn't believe it. And, you know, we've always had, like, holy water in the house. She got this out, and you're laughing because you know.
I know.
She threw it all over the house and was praying. Oh my gosh, she dropped to the floor. I was like, oh my gosh, she's had a heart attack. What have I done? She dropped to the floor, she got up, she prayed, she threw herself on the floor, she started stripping. And you know, like, I can only just, and you know, we're laughing, but really, that was my nightmare. I was wondering, I only just said to you that I believe that there's something very different, and my feelings have stretched to wanting to explore different things, Mother, and I feel like I really like women. Hey, Chineke, she gave me pepper that day. I was like, I can't believe that this woman quoted again. And that's what I say. People always quote the Bible and bits from the Bible. And I can't wrong her because she's from a country, my country, Ghana, which has a sodomy law. So my initial start, when I started about, you know, when people ask me, you know, questions, it's always about, why did you decline the MBE? Oh my gosh, that's awful. Why didn't you get that wonderful bit of silver that, you know, you can pin to yourself because the Queen has given it to you? It's because those sodomy laws that have been introduced in countries in Africa mean that I cannot go back to my own country and live my life and be free. So when colonialism has taken its place, when lands and jewellery and things have been taken from my country, and you have left me with a toxic legacy of that colonialism that means sodomy laws allow people to torture, kill and persecute people, all in the name of religion, faith or belief, in their eyes, because that's how the legislation in those days was passed. You know, you pass legislation through law, and even in Parliament here it goes for a particular act. You know, I would never, ever, ever accept an MBE whilst Commonwealth countries are still in a state of affairs and have a sodomy law that means that we will not deal with freedom and rights for all. It's disgusting. I'm anti-establishment. That's the reality of it. But I had to make my point and just say, you know, thank you, because I'm always, always grateful for an acknowledgement and a recognition of work that is done in the community from a grassroots level. But it doesn't mean I have to sell my soul to the devil and accept something that later on down the line, when my children's children, maybe they come out, or maybe they have a particular journey. How do you accept something that is not truly inclusive and accepting of all? It is an award or an honour that is not an honour, because you have still kept the name empire. So the word empire, what that means to me is something that has been stripped away from countries like mine. Legacies that have been left that don't allow freedom of people to travel and be who they want to be. You know, so yeah, that's me. You know, I typed out a speech, and I thought it was really good as I was reading it on the train, and now I know that I've sort of come to my time, and I didn't even get to say it. So see, that's what you do, Maria. When you tell me, just talk, you know, I'll talk, and I don't get to say what I really want to say. So I know that sort of timing is upon us, and you know, it's before the trains were late and couldn't really get here. But I think when we talk about faith and belief, you know, I don't know anybody, if you don't have faith, if you don't have belief, if you're an atheist, it's fine. But we don't belittle somebody else who does. And we don't set people apart, because there's a lot that's happening to our Muslim brothers and sisters whereby the attacks are absolutely awful on them. It really is. So can you imagine if you're a Muslim young woman that chooses to wear her headscarf, and you are also experiencing things about yourself that you may want to come out as lesbian, or you're bisexual, or you want to transition, but we automatically look at that young Muslim woman, not sitting next to her on the tube. You know, some of that negative, that narrative that is fed through media and TV and magazines, you know, if you see it, rip it up. Don't take it on board, because it comes back down to that intersectionality that I mentioned. In order to truly have equality, because we talk a lot about equality, we have to be inclusive. But by being inclusive, it means you have to embrace and understand the different intersections that make people up. Now, I love people, I really do. I can talk for ages and you can tap me on my leg and say, time. But I do, I absolutely love people. I love the little bits about what makes them them. And that's why I feel that I deal with inclusion, and I deal with understanding intersectionality. And it's not a buzzword. It actually derived from a woman called Kimberly Crenshaw in the States, who was a black feminist activist. And she tried to get into particular spaces and navigate her way through being an activist, being a feminist, and found that even within the feminist movement, where back in the day it was predominantly white women, she couldn't navigate her way through. So she said that why is no one understanding the many different intersections to who she was? And ever since I read about her, I was like, this is it. It's not just about equality. This is it. It's about each and every single one of us in here being very different. We come with faith. You know, my comrade over there with his dog collar, and you know, my sister that sat next to me, my family that, you know, we're both from Africa, you know, my comrades, trade unions, people who have disabilities. You need to embrace that, because it's only until you start really embracing it and understanding it and living it that you can change things, because we're stronger in numbers when we come together collectively, and that's part of what a trade union movement does, because we have self-organised groups that talk about what it means to be disabled, what it means to be LGBT, what it means to be a young worker, what it means to be all the different variances that I mentioned. But the one thing we must never do when we are wanting to achieve real equality is out-trump each other with our differences or our disadvantage. We must never sort of marginalise our, you know, our own comrades or brothers and sisters, because then we've sort of lost half the fight, haven't we? You know, I couldn't even dare to think about, you know, saying to you, oh, you know, bloody women, oh, you just moan. I've divided us straight away. I really have. You know, just because I'm black, it doesn't mean that I will say racism is the most important issue, and it's not about you at work having a particular faith and belief why you're being picked on. No, we must deal with racism. I've divided and broken the actual argument. So in order to strengthen it, let's come together and say, this is discrimination, this is hurtful, this is pain, this is not right. But if we come together, we can challenge that. So, you know, if history has taught me anything, and I will in closing, because there's no point now, I will in closing, you know, just say if history has taught me anything, it's from Harvey Milk being elected San Francisco mayor, you know, Rosa Parks sitting down so people like myself can stand up and stand tall and be proud and have the rights that I have, even though there's a lot happening around Black Lives Matters here and abroad. And from people like Doreen Lawrence doggedly pursuing justice for her son Stephen Lawrence. It means that that's why I got on this train and said I'm going to be here, because if I was talking to a room with just 2 people in, or with 5 people or 500 people, I want to, even if you all but one thought I was absolutely crap, that one person is going to go and tell somebody, well, you know, she said this, and it means I've made a difference. So my thing is that we have to keep on talking with each other, we have to keep on supporting each other, we have to be unified in our approach, we have to be uncomfortable in certain situations. So if I speak to, you know, my white comrades and say, bloody privilege, white privilege, do you understand it? Don't be uncomfortable, don't be angry. Don't think that I'm racist, although I can't be racist, but let's think about what it actually means and start normalising the conversation about privilege and power and class and the things that have tried to divide us and what the current government is doing to divide us, even where austerity is concerned. So I always leave people with a quote that resonates with me, and Maria's probably heard this 5 million times, because it's something that keeps that fire in my belly, that keeps me going, that makes me say to my kids, do what is right and not follow the masses just because you want to fit in. It's by Desmond Bishop Tutu, and he says, if you are neutral in the situations of injustice, it means you've chosen the side of the oppressor. I'll just say that again. He said, if you are neutral in the situations of injustice, it means you've chosen the side of the oppressor. So I thank you for the invite. I apologise for being late, but I really, really actually feel inspired by just talking and knowing that I can share part of my story and be authentic and put it out in the arena, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Get the floors open again for questions. Any questions, anybody?
I've got a few, but I'm just going to throw one out there to start off with. I'm interested, due to family circumstances, to do with gender-specific roles for parenting, and I was wondering what the panel thought as to whether children need their parents to define gender-specific roles to allow them to allow the developmental process to be normal, I suppose, and if not, why not?
I grew up with a single mum, so I had no male influence, and my honest opinion is when we start having mum doing mum's things, dad's doing dad's things, that's social engineering. You know, we're just teaching them to do what we think is right. And I keep going back to this blue sky thinking where we get to this world where everyone self-identifies their gender. Do you know, Ben does all the cooking in my house, you know, so technically the woman should be in the kitchen, Ben does all the cooking. And for me, it's really important that we stop influencing children to do the things that we think that it is socially acceptable and what we've been taught as children, and stop thinking that children need both parents, or that children need two separate genders as parents. You know, so many children are growing up in same-sex relationships now with the same-sex parents, and does that mean that they're going to grow up any different? They'll probably grow up no better or no worse, because so long as those two people love that child and teach them core values, you know, to respect people no matter of their belief, their race, their size, the colour of their hair, you know, so long as those values are being taught to that child, who cares what gender it is that's teaching them? And I genuinely don't think it matters.
I mean, it's a huge question, because when we talk about sort of non-binary and people who choose not to identify as male or female, I think children growing up, it's hard for me to comment because I have two girls and I raised them as girls, so I don't know what it would be like to say, okay, no, we're not going to say pink for the girls and, you know, do that whole stereotypical thing. But I get it now. But because I've already raised my girls to a particular point, I don't know. But I respect any parent's right to not deal with conformity. And that's the only way I can put it. But I do believe every child needs role models, be it non-binary, be it male, be it female, because it's about, we see a lot on TV, and children automatically want to be like somebody they see, you know, when you open the Just 17 magazine, I'm going back now, I'm going to find out my age, you open the magazine and you see, oh, I just want to be just like her, because that's what's right. So maybe it's not just about what the parents deal with non-conformity, it's about what we see in the magazines, media and paper. But I respect any parent's right, yeah.
I mean, what I would say is I think that what a child needs, I think you said it there, is love, isn't it? I mean, that's the most important thing in raising children, is they experience love. And you know, I've seen children grow up in a whole range of relationships. And one of the things I detest, you know, the stigmatisation of single mothers or any form of relationship, because, you know, you see healthy children growing out of all kinds of different contexts in which they grow up. And if people are broken as children, and a lot of people are broken as children within all sorts of relationships, including, you know, with a mum and dad, then you know, there's always the opportunity for healing as well. The thing I would say is that I think it's a big challenge for parents, and one with perhaps not engaging with much. And I've got 5 children. My oldest is 19 and the youngest is 10. And you know, I have to go through sort of things and say, well, I want to be sure that I'm not kind of trying to force them into any kind of conformity about who they are or whatever. And the children growing up, I mean, they're very sharp. You know, when you mentioned non-binary, a lot of young people are kind of really switched on to that. I mean, my son said to me, oldest one said to me this morning, talk about his work context. He said to me, have you heard the phrase checking your privilege? He wasn't talking about, should I check my privilege? But his work. And I thought, oh, you know, of course. You know, they're switched on. They're totally switched on. And I think, well, that's a challenge for parents, because they're engaging in different language, and they're growing up with different expectations. And if we put in all this sort of conformity onto them, then there's a bit of a dissonance there between their experience and identity and what we might be saying as parents. You know, great to hear about your mum. You know, what a fantastically supportive person she was. And, you know, she had to negotiate that. And I think that's the challenge for parents. And, you know, maybe we need some education around that. What it means to be parents growing up, not trying to get their children to conform to certain expectations.
I think just on that point, I think it's really, really interesting that more and more people are being switched on to non-binary, and the media are doing a better job than they was of highlighting transgender people. But what isn't happening at the moment is the signposting, the support that's needed. These children that are as young as sort of 8 and 9 are saying, actually, I've got gender identity questions. A lot of the time are being taken to general practitioners by their parents, and their general practitioners don't know what to do, with them. And these parents of these young people that are in probably turmoil can't get help, just can't get it. And the one place that you should be able to go to is your general practitioner. And up until 6 months ago, where I had an appointment at the Churchill Hospital, I would often go to my general practitioner now, in these days, and tell them the medication that I should be taking, and telling them the statistics that my blood should be showing, because they don't know how to help transgender people. And that's ridiculous. But, you know, there's got to be a match up for the awareness that's being raised and the support for those people that are actually saying, oh, that might be me. So,
yeah, I'm actually fine now with my GP. I'm giving her the information that she should already know.
yeah, and that, I mean, that is an issue, isn't it?
Okay, we've got Maria, Michael, Pip. Somebody else put that. And then no.
Sorry, mine wasn't a question, I just wanted to add to that.
I understand that, but there is people that want to ask questions.
Because there is an organisation advertised outside for transgender young people, I just wanted to flag the leaflets, that's all.
Yeah, well, a slightly different angle. I just wanted to pick up and follow up something that Stephen said in his presentation about the fact that in the Church of England over the last 30 years, probably all your adult life and a bit of your adolescence as well, I'm sure things have gone into conservative direction. And I think that that's reflected in all the churches. I mean, I'm brought up Catholic, and that's definitely what has happened in the Catholic Church. It's much more conservative now than it was 30 years ago. On issues around sexuality. In many ways, issues of social justice have actually been taken on board, but when it comes to issues around sexuality and gender identity, it's gone, and it's not just in the UK, it's in the world as a whole. I wonder whether any of you had any views on why you thought that was. Some people think it's a response to secularisation, or people, churches feeling in a bunker because of their secularisation. I don't know. It's certainly the case, what you said, that there's the cutting edge of what is progressive and what is conservative, not just in the UK but throughout the world, tends to be around sexuality and gender identity issues. I just think it's a very interesting phenomenon that for all of us who are professional, it's not just for people who are LGBT have to fight that, it's actually a fight between progressive forces and conservative forces in the world as a whole. These have become touchstone issues, and the point that the film makes. I have looked at the film. We can't be neutral. Anyone, whether you're LGBT or not, the fact that there's homophobia, in fact there's transphobia, it's a signal of very bad things afoot that we've all got to take a stance on.
One response to that is when we think about social progress, we tend to think that historically things just get better and better and better. Well, they don't actually, you know, and that's one of the things we have to face. Is sometimes we have periods where things go backwards, as it were. And I think what and secularisation. I mean, there's another. You know, we tend to think secularisation is something that is going to continue, and you know, we're going to become a less and less sort of faith-aware world. Well, the secularisation thesis is based on that view, and there's a lot of criticism of it, which suggests actually, you know, it's not necessarily the case that faith is very important to people in many places, and is not dying out by any stretch of imagination. But I think, you know, when you look at it in the Church of England, you can see particular sort of policy interventions that happened, which led to a situation where the Conservatives got control of the policies, they got control of the narrative. And what we're seeking to do is to try to reverse that, to build the alternative narrative. I think in the Catholic Church, it's clear that Pope Benedict had a very conservative position. He wouldn't even use the word gay. And Pope Francis has got a different approach. He's not necessarily where we'd all want him to be, but he's talking about gay people, he's talking about welcome. The Roman Catholic Church has been having this massive synod on the family, which we'll report, and there's some progressive things about it. And then the other thing is to talk about colonialisation, is that we tend to think sometimes that, you know, when we think of, say, the churches in Africa, that they are the, you know, less progressive. There's a lot of evidence, actually, that, you know, within African cultures, there's a lot of sort of positivity about different forms of sexuality, different kinds of relationship, and that perhaps a lot of the thinking around, just as you were saying with the sodomy laws, a lot of the means by which some of the churches in Africa have become more conservative is through colonialisation. It is through, now in particular, the influence of American right-wing religion in Africa. That's a battle that the African churches are having. So it doesn't always go in one direction, but I think it's the responsibility of, you know, the progressives always to want to try and, you know, challenge the negative narratives in order to make the positive narratives, and that's how social progress comes around.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Michael. My question really is for Phil and Shanice, and I understand it might be quite a difficult question to answer, but the people that you both described who physically abused you for who you were and who you are, if you had the opportunity now to talk to them, what would you say, and would you say anything?
Yeah, I do talk to them because he's the father of my kid, so it was 9 years later. You go through a journey and you have to understand first who you are. You have to get to know who you are, and you have to deal with forgiveness. And dealing with that forgiveness, and it's quite, you know, the question. Yeah, it's sort of brought back a memory, because when you deal with forgiveness, you have to let yourself truly go. Sorry, God, I didn't realise it. You have to let yourself go. So, yes, I forgave, and which means that I can be in the same space. It means that I can also thank him for being part of that journey, and not deal with hate. Because the reason why, and I don't mean this to sound big-headed, but the reason why I'm successful in what I do, and I don't mean in the monetary sense, but in everything, my whole being, I believe there's a light that shines over me, and, you know, the God above looks after me, is because I don't hate. I don't hate him for his ignorance and what he did at a period that, out of fear, because he doesn't know and doesn't understand, that he chose to raise his hand. He chose to want to quash and kill any sort of feeling of, how can this be, you've crushed my ego. So, yeah, probably spark something up. You know, I was told when you cry it means you're a little bit intelligent, so so smart.
hit the nail on the head there, and very similarly to Phil, I can stand up and quite hand on my heart say I actually love myself. I genuinely love myself. And the reason I love myself is because of every single person that ever hit me, because of every single person that said you're filthy, you're dirty, you're a tranny, you're this, you're that. The reason I love myself is because I actually had to contradict them, because if I didn't, I would never be here. I wouldn't be able to survive if I believed everything they said. So I really had to challenge everything that they were saying. And it was through challenging, every time they called me something evil, it was through challenging what they were saying that I actually realised, I'm great. I am a wonderful person. Do you know, I care about people. I'm genuine. I am a great person. So I actually have them to thank for that. And I don't hate anybody. I couldn't hate anybody because it's ignorance and lack of education and social engineering and in many cases poor parenting and media coverage. All of these things that's created that person to do that thing to me. It's 9 times out of 10 it's not a conscious choice. It's something that's unbiased. It's just ingrained in them. So I just let it go and let them get on with their lives.
Thank you.
I've got 2 questions, one for Sophie and one for Stephen. With Sophie, I just want to find out, what are you doing to, in Ghana to promote awareness so that no children can go through what you went through and not feel that they're possessed by the devil like our parents would say? And secondly, to Stephen, I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. People would say, they might argue that the church congregation is decreasing, and so you are trying to get more people to come into church, so you are taking that route.
Oh, do you know, I thought you said Shanice or yeah, I'm Phil. Sorry.
Phil, okay.
Yeah. What am I doing? Well, I'm on a board called Justice for Gay Africans, and it doesn't just look at what's happening in Ghana, but it looks at the bill that was passed in Nigeria, and it looks at what's happening in Uganda. But just in terms of Ghana, though, I speak to my dad quite a bit, and my dad, as I said, is quite a liberal person. But sometimes when your parents get older, not my mum, but my dad, they start to have these conversations. And my dad's on Facebook now, and he I tag him every now and again, and he says, "Gosh, is there nothing you just want to keep to yourself?" So when I didn't accept the nomination for the MBE, he was tagged, and he lives in Ghana right now, so it means that other people see it, and he didn't complain about other people seeing it. So that is a small way to make different changes. And he said to me, your mum and me really would have loved to have gone to the palace, and my mum would have liked to have had the bag and matching shoes and the hat, but I'm really proud of you. So even if I'm not directly